January. Lots of boring films in the movie theaters. It's been now like 2 weeks, and honestly, I wasn't too much into the move of going into the movies because not much caught my attention. Again, I haven't seen an interesting movie in Netflix or other streaming that I might. Nah, what should I do? Oh yeah, you know what? It's been a long time since I made a review about a TV series. And honestly, because, let me tell you guys, last year stuff was so much into my, my personal life and outside life that it kind of broke a little bit my mood on TV series. Although, don't get me wrong, sometimes I do enjoy them, but making reviews about TV series is a little bit harder compared to movies, because there's so much, but yet so little time. So I think that, considering that I feel bored, maybe it's a good time, but which one should I go? I want to talk about Final Space Season 3 or the new Aggressive Reticle Season 4. Heads, Final Space. Tails, Aggressive Reticle. Oh, okay. Final Space it is. Alright, I got my things ready to talk about Final Space Season 3, in which I was actually kind of hesitant to make an episode out of it because, don't get me wrong, I love Final Space. It's so much that I even dedicated myself to making, the seasonal reviews out of each episode. But Final Space Season 3, every time it was kind of a little bit hard to watch considering the nature of the show, but it has some great drama into it, and it was some great stuff until we finally got into the final episode, and then of course received the terrible news about the cancellation, which that made me feel that this is gonna be a hard watch for this season, because we're considering the circumstances that how it developed and how it ended. Now oh my god, it's kind of like this feeling. But either way, you remember Season 2 ended with our main cast going to save Quinn and finally enter Final Space. So what happens after that? Well, let's start my Season 3 review. Episode 1 starts out right after the events from the finale of Season 2. Bolo is freed, Gary's mother joins the team after she regrets what she has done to her son, and everyone enters Final Space in order to rescue Quinn. Little did they know, it was all a trap from the Titan Addictus. So it all starts out, with this chase scene in which in which, of course, we see a glimpse of final space, and it all ends up with their ship, the Crimson Light, getting destroyed, and of course the AI Eva, or what was it, Eva or Eve? It's kind of escaping me. The AI gets destroyed, much to the sadness of Hugh, and of course everyone then gets stranded into this planet, and they stay there for a whole month. And honestly, I gotta say that, remember that in my previous vlogs about Final Space, I always kind of describe Final Space with Kingdom Hearts, but I was half wrong and half right, because it is indeed kind of like Kingdom Hearts is kind of like the heart of all worlds. Final Space is technically the heart of all space and time, in which everything is merged in that place. But of course it is filled with titans, radiation, and of course lots of corpses of Garys from different times and different periods, and of course they turn into zombies because of Evictus. It's kind of like, again, this is technically kind of like again, Kingdom Hearts, where it's full of Heartless and it is filled with, and of course it has all these timeline things. And I'm not gonna overcomplicate the whole thing, but anyway, a month has passed. They have to survive with whatever they got. Gary and Quinn, they get much more friendly, but they're Quinn basically is hiding that she has some radiation poisoning from the Final Space. And of course, then later a horde of zombies attack them. Then Bolo shows up battling one of those titans. And during the battle, the team gets separated into three. One with Gary's team, another one with Avocado's team, and another one with Mooncake, alone with Bolo. And well, I gotta admit that during the whole thing, there's kind of like this bromance moment between Gary and Avocado that I get giggles out of it, because it felt a little bit too homoerotic, but it was awesome. Well, not awesome in saying that, oh yeah, no, I mean, I really liked the bromance between Gary and Avocado, but that one felt a little bit so much that it was like, I can feel you, I know you're alive, I have a bond with you. Even Quinn is like, I thought we had the bond, and Gary's like, no, it's a little bit different. That was kind of hilarious. And speaking of hilarious, did I mention that Tribor was also pregnant? Yeah, he did mention that he is pregnant. He did mention that he changes gender once in a while, but I remember that the first time I saw this episode, I never expected to hear words like from him saying, I am pregnant. And it comes out with this ludicrous moment in which Gary had to help Tribor give birth. And don't worry, it's not as gross as you can think of. It's still gross, but not as gross as other birthing moments, scenes that I have seen in, well, other animated series or for best of my knowledge, live action films. One doesn't escape. A few titles escape me. I'll tell you later. So yeah, Tribor gives birth to an egg, but lo and behold, that egg, it hatches into this mini Tribor with 4 eyes, and in mere seconds, it turns into this badass fighter, adult, in mere seconds again. And he speaks Spanish, and he names himself Cuatro Nostro. So yeah, we got a new character, Quattro Nostro, Tribor's son. And in the meantime, Avocado's group, they find, the sliced half of a giant guy. I don't know if it's a robot or not, but basically it doesn't have legs and everything. At first he complains about his legs, but then this giant say that there's no escape into final space. He has been there. He just dig himself into this planet just to die. And also he reveals that final space, the atmosphere is poisonous. And the longer you stay there, you'll get radiation into your skin, and it slowly kills you. Which makes everyone realize that Quinn has been there the longest, so she might have, the radiation poisoning. And of course, then it all ends with Bolo and this giant titan battling it all out, destroying the planet, and leaving the fate of all our characters unknown, much to the shock of Mooncake. So Bolo offered him to accompany him for his revenge against the Titans. But of course, we know that our characters are doing fine. They are in the floating pieces of the planet. And then Gary and Quinn, much to their shock, in their horizon, they see something that they never expected to see again. Planet Earth. So yeah, episode 2 starts out with Gary and Quinn finding Earth, after it got swallowed by final space. These two are alongside Kevin and Hugh, and so they decided to go into the Earth to find at least something in order to find their friends, in which they're separate. No. So yeah, they find Earth after being swallowed by final space. Gary Quinn is with Kevin and Hugh. They're doing all right after being separated after Bolo's fight with that Titan. Mooncake is still with Bolo, and Avocado is with the rest of the group. Well, more or less, because mere seconds later, Tribor separates from the group along with Quattro Nostro because he's going for his ritual of paternity. Yep, he decides to go solo in order to have father-son bonding with Quattro Nostro. Well, in a ways it doesn't surprise me because that Tribor was always kind of like the lone wolf type of guy. But anyway, the episode mostly centered that Gary, Quinn, Kevin, and Hugh they get into Earth and to find at least ways to restock, find ways to get reunite with their friends again, and if they're lucky, find a way to get out of final space. And when we get to planet Earth, man, that is a total disaster. It's something that you could imagine what will happen if the Earth it gets almost annihilated. Gravity is almost non-existent. You see floating corpses. Everyone is dead. It's really sci-fi horrific. And they land in France. Also, there's a little bit of a subplot in this in which Hugh is beginning to question his mortality since he's now, in his robot body here and there. But then the plot kicks in when Gary gets captured and gets surrounded by his worst nightmare. An army of Kevins. You know what? Last season, one of the biggest disappointments that I had is that there was kind of like an episode in which the gang finds this whole group of crazy Kevins, and in my mind it was like, oh my god, if Gary could have seen this, he will go insane because I really love, when Gary gets angry with Kevin, at least of comedic value. And this is the closest it is because he gets surrounded by he gets surrounded by all these Kevins, and all these Kevins are fans of him because they were watching his vlogs. When he got since the beginning of the series, he just made vlogs for Quinn in order to keep himself sane. And little did he know, all these Kevins were watching him and they become his fan. Well, not just all these Kevins, but also this little cute engineering bear named Biscuit, who was also kind of became his fan. And much to the surprise of everyone, they also find out that there's another survivor apart from this cute biscuit tiger thing, who survived, the whole Earth being swallowed into final space. They find that the survivor is none other than a guy named Kevin Smith Newton or something like that. But basically, he's the creator of the Kevins. And by the way, he's voiced by Tom Kenny. The first instant that Gary has is like, oh, I found the father of Beelzebub. I'm gonna kill him. And yeah, they finally meet him, and you can tell that he's kind of unhinged in insanity because he's all alone. He doesn't have anyone to talk to. He even made a museum of turds. They just ask him so he can help them. So he tells them that, well, you can if we go further over there, I got a ship that I agreed to give to Quinn. Even though Quinn is like, dude, this is the first time I met you. I never asked you anything. So basically, yeah, now they're going on a quest to, get a new ship, in which, of course, they have to go through landfish. And honestly, I will say that this was a very interesting episode in which it gives out some kind of glimmer of hope of the character and it gives out, the old, or what they're gonna have to do during the whole. Probably during this season, in which it's find their friends, and this Kevin guy, he finds that he basically has an answer or a solution to how they can escape final space, which is basically kind of like a transfer warp device that is situated in London, and they have to regulate almost all the things needed in order to escape. So yeah, they finally got I will say that they finally get their ship. Hugh incorporates himself becoming into the AI of the new ship. And well, we got the new ship, and this time they call it the Galaxy 2. Yep, in honor of the first ship, they call it the Galaxy 2. And in the meantime, of course, Bolo and Mooncake, they're still on their quest to avenge revenge against the Titans. Bolo made this huge, gigantic sword made by the energy that Mooncake spits. And of course, the rest of the group, they get captured by the Arachnitex. The giant spider creatures that created the Titans, and they sealed them. Well, some of them are living in final space, and when they mentioned that they met this the Jeremy guy, the one that they meet in season 2, they kind of befriend them. But unfortunately, these Arachnitex get killed immediately by none other than an enemy they never expected to see again. The Lord Commander. Episode 3, Season 3, it starts out a little bit with a flashback stating how how Lord Commander survived last season, in which, well, if you remember, he was skewered by Nightfall, but of course he was picked up by Evictus in order to, and of course heal him of his injuries in order, with the condition to help him get Mooncake. And then, of course, we get with the crux of the episode, in which he kidnaps the Avocado's team, and in order to make them spill the beans on Mooncake's whereabouts, he forces Avocado to tell his backstory and his history with him and Lord Commander to Little Cado. And for the most of this episode, it's just seeing him, where he comes from, his motive, and it fleshes out this character, in which we thought that we just know kind of like the basis of him, but I really like that the more we advance to the series, the more layers we get to every single character. In this case, it turns to put more layers to Avocado's background, in which it is shown that the Ventrexians were basically a warmonger species, in which they just go to war, and Avocado was technically the best of them all. Until it was one moment in which they were surrounded by enemies, until Lord Commander eradicated everyone. So they began to, become loyal to him, and he helped them, with the upcoming wars and everything. And by the way, the reason of war, Avocado even states that no one remembers. They just go to war. That's it. They're in a war, but they don't know. They don't know how it started and why he keeps doing it, despite that Avocado has a wife and a son. But Lord Commander says that, well, because that's the only thing you do. You only know how to kill. So he's technically a mercenary without a purpose. But of course, Lord Commander says that he wants the Ventrexia, since they are since of course they're the species that are really good on killing. They're warmongers and really skilled soldiers. But of course, in order to prove the loyalty, to prove Avocado's loyalty, he gives him the order to kill off the king and the queen of Ventrexia. And as reluctant as Avocado was, he does so. And this is one of those things that he wholesomely regrets it. And we see him in his face, in the way he tells it, and man, that this gives layers to a character that we like, but we can see that, man, that everything just eats him up, and it's pretty sad, I must say, really, really sad. Although it's kind of sweet that everyone technically just forgives him. They accept his apology because they know that he was just being used by Lord Commander, since he's just such a jerk and everything. But it doesn't. But man, that it's really heartbreaking to know where he comes from. And then, of course, we got the other plot in which we got Gary and Quinn in the Neo Galaxy 2. But apparently Quinn is getting a little bit growing apart from Gary, not because she wants to, but it's because she's afraid to tell him that she is on an advanced stage of the final space poisoning. And she begins to wonder, you know what, it might break his heart if I tell him that I'm gonna die and everything. So honestly, it's a big worry for her. Oh, and then of course we get to know that they finally found the whereabouts of Mooncake, as well that they find out that they have a stowaway, which is none other than Biscuit. You know, the tiger bear creature from last episode. And with that in mind, of course, we also got the Mooncake side of the story, in which he's alongside Bolo. They reach and meet the Titan who killed off Bolo's lover. And we ensue a fight. We hear both sides of the story. Why the Titans are loyal to Invictus, because of course they thought that it was the better deal to than being the slave from the Arachnetics. So technically, yeah, it's a revenge battle that you can see. One is doing it for his lover, and he becomes, the rogue one, and he just ends up of killing the Titan that was also practically a friend of his. And of course, it all ends with the Galaxy 2 reaching Mooncake. Gary sees Mooncake, and then he realizes that Bolo technically lied by telling Mooncake that everyone died. And Gary's like, dude, what the hell? What is going on? I was blinded by my revenge and everything. Dude, we have these moments. Cool down and everything, but you know what? We don't want to. We're not here to kill Invictus. We are here. We got what we wanted, and we want to get out of final space. But Gary, I need you. No. I don't think this is gonna work. We have to. You do you. We do us. So we call it a cool down moment. And they leave Bolo. So yeah, I must say that this is honestly one of the strongest episodes when it's about character development, in which I gotta say that some of the dialogues are really strong. I gotta say, this is why I do beginning to have a lot of respect to this show. Oh, and you thought that Avocado's backstory is heartbreaking. Wait until that heart gets turned into pieces when it is revealed that Avocado didn't mention one important thing. That when he killed the king and the queen, their son survived. And that little son was little Kato. Episode 4 starts out that Gary has between 2 or 5 days in order, as a time limit in order to rescue his team and go back to the scientists in Earth so they can find a way to get out of final space. And also at the same time, Hugh does know that Quinn has the final space poisoning, and he tells her that she has like 30 hours or so to live. And of course, Quinn technically forces him to keep all this in secret because, well, she just wanted to enjoy what's left of her time without making Gary worry. So those are technically the initial things to start out this episode. But the main gist of the episode is that Lord Commander takes everyone else to this. How can I say this? The best way I can describe it is some sort of prison that in which the forces of Invictus takes all his prisoners. It chains them into pieces of asteroids, and little by little his aura sucks out at random all the prisoners, turning him into sucking their souls. It's kind of hard to describe it, but the best way I can describe it is that it sucks their souls at random, which honestly, it is a horrible way when you have all these prisoners, chained up in different asteroids, and they're just awaiting, their moment to die at random. So he chains up all of the crew into each asteroid, except for Ash, because somehow Lord Commander becomes interested in Ash's power. And he dominates her, and basically he just begins to use his manipulative words in order to tell Ash to join him. But of course she refuses, because if you know her from last season, she technically just doesn't like her power it's because of her powers that basically she kills off her parents, as well as the sole reason that she lost her sister. This is technically the heaviest burden that she has. And she already lost, of course, Clarence as a father figure, and the only thing that she has is Fox. So she's technically stuck into the refusing to know where her powers come from, which apparently the source of her powers comes from Invictus, which of course it implies that probably is her daughter or so. But of course that this is technically just the juicing of the episode, because later, of course, the only one who actually gets out of the chains easily is none other than Cheryl, Gary's mom. And she ditches the others, not because she just ditches them, but mostly because she just wants to find a communicator from one of those prisoners, so she can finally contact Gary and give them the coordinates of where they are. And before I continue that plot point, there is also a little bit of a subplot. Although the subplot, it comes off a little bit comedic compared to the serious tone that the series is having. That subplot belongs to Tribor and Quaternostro, because if you remember they got separated in order to have this father-son bonding. And well, it becomes a little bit rocky until both they find by accident this lost civilization inside a planet in final space, and they go to this place in which it kind of looks like a Tatooine marketplace, in which it has these people, and well, Tribor is trying to buy some what was it, one of those scarves capes, because that he's a little bit too sassy when it's about fashion. And of course they get confronted by these mantis people, in which he and Patronostro kills. And then a series of, really weird humorous events happen, in which basically it ends up with Tribor and Patronostro recruiting the people of that marketplace and planet as their own resistance. So technically it's almost like the Tribor is technically forming his own final space army. So basically, yeah, it is. That Tribor is basically the badass of the team, but also he's the lone wolf. But yeah, that part was a little bit comedic, considering that then it all ends up with this big battle between Gary and Lord Commander. And also, it is also revealed, according to Biscuit, is that Gary's robotic arm, yep, he hasn't been using it properly, because it is revealed that he can transform his robotic arm into a hand cannon and even a sword. So he didn't notice that he didn't notice. So basically, that kind of proves how Biscuit is an expert technician and mechanic in one way or another. But because he tells him he tells him Gary about this, but also by curiosity, he is also keeping Hugh's body that he just kept it. But of course, if final space, things are not exactly, how can I say, all the time happy. And this, I actually begin to appreciate it, even though it breaks my heart, because that kind of shows how big the stakes in the series get. The stakes gets bigger and bigger and bigger. What happens is that, of course, Invictus Aura is getting close to get their friends. They rescue everyone, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, they couldn't save Fox. Fox gets Fox gets possessed by the aura of Invictus, and because of the circumstances, they had to run away. This, of course, leaves Ash into a total train wreck because, well, it is technically the only family, it's the closest thing to her family that she has. He was technically her brother. And, of course, it all ends with, of course, Ash being kind of like an emotional wreck because of the loss of Fox. And, of course, Lord Commander is on pursuit. Episode 5 is so heartbreaking that this episode that had such magnitude, it wasn't even written by Alan Rogers, the creator himself. It was actually written by the director of the show. And also, this episode was submitted for the Emmy Awards for Best Outstanding Animated Show, as well as has been as a nomination for Best Voice Acting for what was the name of the actress? Let me see here. For Tika Sumpter, who she voices Quinn. And man, that it shows. Man, that it shows. So the episode starts that they go to lightful speed in order to escape Lord Commander. But unfortunately, when they went a little bit too close to a black hole, but not exactly just any black hole. It's a black hole that its biggest purpose is that it serves as a wormhole that leads them directly to Invictus. So the crew are technically how can I say, they went from they jumped from the frying pan into the fire. It's an old saying that says that from one problem you go into another that is worse, and their only means to escape is to try to open a mechanism that absorbs the energy of Invictus in order to supercharge the Galaxy 2, so they can use light full speed again in order to escape. But during these moments, well, lots of things happen. First of all, I'll go with kind of like the little less important. Like, for example, we get kind of like this quest between Avocado, Little Cato, Kevin, Biscuit, and Mooncake. That they are the ones that they took up the task to open that mechanism in order to absorb it. But of course, they had to deal with increased gravity, and of course the force of that black hole. I will say that there are a few moments of a little bit of gross out humor or a gross out imagery. Not exactly very gross, but if you wince onto the sight of having Avocado having one of his eye socket pop out of his eye, and then you have kind of like some mere seconds of the eyes just dangling off his nerve, yeah, you're gonna be grossed out. And of course, there is a kind of like a small moment in which both Avocado and Little Cato had to suffer a bit of spaghettization. Thank God there are cartoons, because spaghettization due to black hole is 100% unsurvivable. Thank God, again, the cartoons are very flexible. But of course, during the meantime, Ash is having her guilt due to abandoning Fox, and since she feels the presence as Invictus getting closer and closer, she is trying her damnness to resist everything about this. But the main crux and the MVP of this episode is none other than Quinn. This, much like Avocado's episode, this is this time to see a little bit more about Quinn's past, in which I'm glad that we got that. So in a way, I'm I was never much of a kind of like a Quinn fan. I just saw her kind of like, the typical, the girl that our main character falls in love, and well, she's shown out to be brilliant and everything. We didn't know much about her, at least three dimensionally, especially since she technically disappeared during the second season because she was stuck in final space. But this time we finally get to see her, we get to know more about her, and boy, that is really sad. It should, much like about, because you see that almost every single character has something that they regret and feel pretty bad about it. We got, like for example, we got Gary technically feeling regret about, losing his father. We got Avocado feeling regret about what we saw, that he killed off the king and queen of Entrexia. And now we see Quinn's guilt, in which it is shown that she had a sister named Avery, and she had let's say, a very headstrong and a very, very reckless sister. And it showed that Quinn came out from a family of the military. It's kind of showing why Quinn was one of those people, in the army of that universe, the Infinity Guards. All this we seen, in all these moments of flashback that she's having, and even Hugh doesn't know why she's having, but we can technically deduce that she's technically, her life is flashing before her eyes due to the final space poisoning, and getting worse due to the presence of Invictus. But it shows, the harsh, the kind of like the moments of harshness that Quinn had, and how she feels responsible for the death of her sister, even though it wasn't much technically her fault. But her mother, who was a general in the Infinity Guards, she gave her kind of like a hard lesson, well, it might be a really, really hard lesson. It was a good one, but that kind of cemented Quinn on what, this sense of guilt and responsibility that she had, in which well, her sister, in one moment in which they were practicing, going underwater, the sister almost dies, but she survives. But as a punishment, the mother puts Quinn into the morgue and tells her that, look at this, all these people dead, and now they're a broken family and all these things. And when you become a leader, you have to shoulder everything, even the possible death of your father, their sister, me, or yourself, even that. But then it is shown that despite everything, Quinn always tried to warn her sister to not to be reckless and to go into the battlefield, into the front lines. But her sister, being too cocky and too reckless, she went there, always risking her life and all these things. And it was technically one moment in which, again, she disobeyed, and well, she gets killed. We don't see how she gets killed and everything. It's just that Quinn just feels the burden that she couldn't protect her sister. And well, again, like I said, even though it's mostly her sister's fault, because she didn't listen. She was basically kind of like very competitive and jealous of Quinn's talent, that she always wanted, to prove herself. Still, Quinn kind of felt that remorse, and considering what is happening, it begins to eat her up to the point that she gets into this into these kind of hallucinations, feeling that she wants to, that if she technically dies, she's gonna make it up for everything, and that kind of also jeopardized with everything. This also leads to Gary also saying also one of his strongest moments, saying that she doesn't need to die. He wants to know more about her, and honestly, remember that I said that that these were submitted for Emmy Awards? It really shows. This episode was really strong, and it actually really changed my mind a lot about Quinn. And really saw her, just like every other character, that everybody is pretty tragic. And the voice actress of Quinn, she does a magnificent job in this one. It's one of her best. It's probably her best moments in showing how this moment actually really hurts her. But of course, like always, it doesn't end very well. In which, of course, they get the energy to go lightfold. But of course, in order to rescue Quinn, Gary, of course, needed Ash's help, in which she does her with her powers. They rescue Quinn, but unfortunately, Ash is left behind. She decides to go into Invictus in order to find answers, much to little Kato's distress. Even he screams saying, "Why do we have to keep leaving people behind?" Which is, again, that hurts. It's because a lot of Final Space moments is always about leaving people behind, and it shows how tragic this is becoming. And to make things even more tragic, it is Gary and the gang finally sees that Quinn has the final space poisoning, and it spread it up into even all of her face. Surely one of the best episodes of Final Space, but like any other great Final Space episode, it has to be also heartbreaking. So yeah, the final space poisoning is getting worse on Quinn, much to the horror of Gary, and Hugh even feels powerless to. He doesn't know what to do despite being an AI. It's incredible how Hugh grew up as an AI character. It starts out, kind of like being a parody to the HAL 9000. And then it kind of became even a three-dimensional character with certain emotion despite its deadpan. But anyway, while searching for solutions and even a pep talk with Cheryl, he decides to call Kevin Van Newton, the scientist on Earth who is working on its way to on the machine to get out of final space. So Hugh asked, saying that, hey, since you stay long on final space, how come you survived? How come you survived? The poisoning of final space. So the guy says, easy, selenium. It's a rare metal that absorbs anything, even the final space poisoning. So basically, if Hugh gets a solution to get the rare metal that it can turn it into a chip implant into the brain of Quinn, it will absorb all the final space poison. And yeah, if you remember, it's the same chip that Nightfall had. So technically, now you get the answer why Nightfall had that, this metal chip on her head. It's because of final space poisoning, and that's technically the way to reverse it. But anyway, the only problem, of course, is that it is rare, and the only one that they found a sample of it. It is on an ongoing comet. And you know that in this case, comets are really, really cold. And well, we get a mission with little avocado, and mooncake in order to retrieve it. So it's basically, all this sci-fi cool stuff that you see. But man, that I will say that the biggest highlight in it is that it's actually when they get the selenium and begin the medical procedure, in which it basically it also involves drilling Quig's head. But of course, the medical procedure needed her to be awake. Some medicals think that is a little bit too, how can I say, complicated to talk. But the biggest thing that there is that to keep her awake, they have to link her pain to someone else in order to keep them awake. And man, that Gary decides to share her pain, and with sci-fi technology and everything, and you can't imagine out of it. If you have things with drilling heads and everything, I can understand it. 2 years ago, I went to a medical procedure that it was kind of like a little bit of a checkup that I'm not gonna go into details, but let's say that it was a procedure that was painful. But of course, we got other subplot that goes there. Like, for example, we get this, the ongoing adventures of Tribor and Quaternostro. And what a way to start their adventure when you see them, fighting these mantis people, and they're riding, believe it or not, these big, giant, flying red rabbits from space. Oh, you know what? That sounds crazy, I know. But trust me, if Final Space, that Final Space, sometimes while being kind of like this space opera, it kind of can't help to trying to become, a lighthearted, funny adventure. But man, that just by mentioning, alien creatures riding giant rabbits is weird. But anyway, they're forming their resistance group, fighting these mantis from the last time we saw them, until when Tribor mentioned how can I say his name? One of the mantis were his like, hey, you know what? We know your name. We heard about you. We heard it from this oracle named Tim Belts. Tim Belts? I heard about this guy. Yeah, he's an oracle, and he told us that you're gonna be kind of like the savior or something like that. And so basically, then it could become Tribor and Quaternostro's quest in order to see this guy named Tim Belts, which of course, first of all, he's dead, and so he leaves them kind of like the message. And when they finally see kind of like the recorded message of this guy, it's just, well, let's say John DiMaggio saying that you're gonna get out of Final Space, and you're gonna save everyone else. Like, but even Tribor is like, but you're talking about me or Quaternostro? That's basically, the subplot with Tribor. Well, there is also the subplot, which is also a little bit more serious, in which, remember that Ash gets absorbed by, she went into the black hole that leads her directly to Invictus, where he is, Seal and everything. Well, we get this conversation between her and Invictus, and basically it's just Invictus trying to make her join her side, and telling her that she must get away from Gary because, well, after many attempts of other Gary from different timelines trying to do the same as a Crusader, but he couldn't save anyone. Considering all the corpses of Gary that you see there. But anyway, he prophesies to Ash that Gary will end up killing Fox, and of course she struggles to not believe it. But of course, Invictus, being the master manipulator that he is, he gives her her powers, and of course she gets kind of like a new look, to the point that she even, I don't remember if she recovers her, one of her eyes and everything. I never noticed that if, because she always had her hair, down. I thought that she always had, her two eyes and everything. But then I noticed in the dialogue saying that you're gonna see it with your own two eyes. Wait a minute, two eyes? So Ash goes through a new look, and Invictus tells her that she has the choice to join him or stay with Gary, and which also means Doom. So he gives her 3 days to think about it. And well, the episode ends with her returning to the ship, and little Kato, of course, surprised that she just came back. Oh, and Quinn now has the chip. She now looks like Nightfall. The face that you saw a few moments ago, that was my reaction the first time I saw this episode. And revisiting this episode, I can indeed say that this is probably one of the cruelest conclusions to an episode that I have seen in this series. Man, Final Space, it really put the stake, in a pedestal over and over and over again, and it kind of shows that characters who have plot armors, it's not always like that, because it kind of shows the stakes that it had. What can I say? So yeah, to start off, Ash is back. She now has a new look. She now looks like an adult, and this freaks out Gary and Avocado. And well, Ash also, she kind of turns a little bit, kind of having this rebellious streak. She becomes a little bit more aggressive. Well, things get a little bit uncomfortable between her and the rest of the crew. Except that little Kato, who is kind of a little bit obvious that he has a little bit of a bonding crush on her. So, but before everything is, before they get kind of like that time to know Ash and everything, and what he had, and knowing that she had came back from Invictus, I mean, then they are visited by none other than this blue fiery gumball guy that appeared in season 1, the gatekeeper who was with Bolo. Well, he returns and he tells the crew that Bolo is not feeling right. He's losing his mind. So he transports them to him and finds out that Bolo is technically losing himself. And the only way to help him is to go inside his mind and find his glimmer of hope, his last speck of sanity that he has. But when they go inside, Ash disappears, and it's because she gets transported by the last spark of insanity of Bolo, who begins to lead her into a place called the Chamber of Doubt. The Chamber of Doubts. This is where she finds Fox. But little does she know is that this Fox is actually Invictus, who possesses his body and begins to manipulate her emotions by having him, like, for example, tell him, his backstory, which this is something that this episode actually kind of needed more, because, well, Fox, as likable as the character had, he was technically the one that it felt missing, that we needed to learn more about him. It is kind of revealed that he wanted to be a musician, but unfortunately he lived in, on war times that they chop off his arms, in order to turn it into a Gatling, have this Gatling gun. And yeah, it is revealed that he was on war with the Ventrecians, which of course, this kind of explains a lot why he and little Kato, they didn't get along very well, but little by little they began to trust each other. So it kind of explains a lot, his personality. But of course, since he and Ash, they treated themselves like adopted siblings. They were family. Ash even begins to say he'll go with him anywhere, even if that means they have to get away with Gary, because of course Fox say that everywhere where Gary goes, it all leads up to death, and it's harsh truth, I say, because if I mean, yeah, Gary is doing a lot, and a lot of this he kind of fails, and it's kind of that makes it even hard. And worst of all, Ash doesn't notice that all of this, and even Fox himself, is being manipulated by Invictus. And even the bolo that Ash saw was actually Invictus trying to deceive her, because in reality, that little spark of sanity that he had is being searched by the rest of the crew, who they go into the mind of Bolo, and they see other different version of Bolo, each one representing his own state of mind of insecurity, doubt, and one of them even has a head shaped like a cookie. So basically, it's trying to find, in order to make him come to his senses, which is revealed that it got worse because of the injury that he had the last time we saw him. Oh yeah, and they find him, and the Bolo, of course, tells them where Ash is, and this is where things get hard. That was a moment that is hard to swallow, because man, how many times this show has to break our hearts? Because remember the prophecy that Invictus said last episode? Well, it came true. Yeah, Gary kills Fox. But he didn't mean to. He didn't mean to. It was Invictus that forced and manipulated everything. He even manipulated Gary's mechanical arm to kill Fox. And we know that Gary didn't do it, but Ash still doesn't believe it. She begins to blame Gary for all of it. Well, they managed to escape Bolo and save his sanity, but everything led to a really, really tragic ending. Even Gary feels so angry and hateful to himself about what had happened that he wasn't strong enough to not let himself be manipulated by Invictus. And Ash, she just lost the only person that she had as a family, the closest thing as a brother, Fox. She begins to blame everyone. Her anger even becomes so irrational, to the point that even when Bolo trying to console her, she just doesn't want to. And Bolo has nothing else to say, but the only thing he could do is to give her Fox's body. The first time I saw it, it was really, really hard, because Fox despite that we didn't know much about his background, he was really likable. I really, and technically the closest thing that we really care for him is, of course, when he was betrayed by his adoptive father, Clarence. And see him die in this horrible way is just cruel. That was honestly one of the cruelest things Invictus has ever done. And trust me, guys, that I was really sad when I saw the first time this episode. It kind of shows that in Final Space, almost nobody is safe. Even the likable characters that we just grew to love. So this episode was served more as an aftermath after the tragic events from the last episodes, which of course it all ends up with Invictus manipulating the events and to make Gary kill off Fox. And of course, the opening starts out with his funeral, but of course you notice that Gary feels horrible. Ash is not ready to forgive him. It's so much that she vents out a lot of her anger, and then of course. With all her rage, she just go outside to have this kind of the usual people that when they can't, they feel so angry about the loss of a loved one, they just go outside and they just do whatever they want. In the case of Ash, she meets this kind of like this glowy thing that had no name. It's just a shape-shifting being that just and it helps her vent out her emotion by destroying asteroids at random and just let it all out, and then have this casual conversation and making a new friend, to the point that even as convinces that Whitby Thing to get herself a new name. She named herself Evra. Let's say that this is more of an episode just venting out. No grand adventure. No, the comedy was kept to a very minimum this time. Of course, that you get the little comedic snarks, or sometimes, of course, the intrusiveness of Kevin. But more or less, this whole episode, it just had this big giant mood of the whole aftermath, because not only Ash is the one that is suffering because of the events. Actually, the one who is having it really, really bad is also Gary. Because he feels totally responsible for it. And it's not just the only time that Gary feels responsible of bringing death to people. I mean, he still also feels responsible for what happened to the planet Earth and all these things. And it sucks for him, and he just kind of reached kind of like a low point in which basically it earned the hatred of someone that he just grew up close as a family. That's pretty much Gary's point. But honestly, I will say that this episode has some of the strongest emotions there is, and probably the best moment in this episode is that Avocado finally decides to confess what he has done in the Trexia to Gary. He admits that he's the one that killed the king and the queen, and that little Kato is not exactly his biological son. Which, of course, it horrifies Gary, and both they get into a fist fight. But you might think that this is something something like kind of like a fallout between friends, because you know that between Gary and Avocado they're technically they have this bromance, but this is probably one of the best moments of their bromance because they just friends fight each other, and of course they punch each other, technically kind of like exchanging their frustrations. And it all ends, of course, with one of the best, I'll say one of the best, how can I say, monologues of Gary. It's venting his emotion, in which he says that he's not angry about Avocado killing, the king and the queen. He's mostly angry that he just got into Little Cato's life, that he looks up to him, like a real father. But still, he knows that what is done is done. What is done is done. And both now they're serving now as surrogate fathers to the little kid. They just have to to just move on and try to better themselves for their future. Just like Gary has to try his best for Ash. And I gotta admit that the first time I saw this moment, that one brought me to tears because it's so emotional, and the voice acting that they did is really good. It's really good. Honestly, I think that this is actually one of the most heartwarming moments, and actually also as sad as the Quinn episode. And so basically, yeah, it at least it ends up a kind of bittersweet, I'll say, in which Ash finally, vent out her emotions thanks to Efrat. She returns to the ship, and she meets Little Cato, have kind of like saying that well I'm fine now. I just vent my frustrations, and I don't think I'm gonna kill Gary. So, but of course, it all ends up with Gary just coming to Ash, trying to give his best to apologize to her, even though Gary, of course, knows that what happened is technically, I wouldn't say unforgivable, because we know that Gary was technically manipulated by Invictus. But still, that he's gonna try his best to know her, and he wishing that he knew Fox. So they both begin at the end. Both begin to bond by, of course, Ash trying to tell Gary stories about Fox. And well, yeah, this is one of the saddest episodes, and I'll say also one of the strongest episodes. But of course. They still have to move on, because the good news, at least, is that Kevin von Newton, the scientist, not to confuse it with Kevin, he brought up the news that everything is ready to go back to Earth, so to go back to their own dimension and get out of final space. So now they have to go back to Earth to make these things. But either way, one of the saddest episodes of Final Space. So we jump from an emotional episode about coping with the tragic death of a loved one to a redemption episode. So yeah, so we start out, that that our gang, they finally go to Earth to see Mr. Kevin, saying that all the things to make the transdimensional bridge or portal to get out of final space is ready, except for one thing. They need to activate the other side of the system that is on the other dimension. So, but for that, they need someone in the other side to activate the device. But who could do it? Almost everybody is dead. The ones that everyone knows, or sometimes there are enemies. So who they're gonna trust that task? Well, they have one person, Clarence. If you remember, in the last season, Clarence betrayed everyone to the point that it even betrayed the feelings of Ash and Fox. And his betrayal was so unforgivable that everyone just scowled him and left him behind. So now they have no choice but to put their faith onto him in order to activate this device in order to get out of final space. And so, well, at first they were reluctant to do it, but Ash said, well, at least he has to know about Fox. And yeah, you can tell that during all this time, Clarence, despite being a con artist, he actually shows genuine emotions of regret. You see him that his facial hair has grown and all these things. He feels all in the dumps until he finally gets the message from Ash, and you could see in his face the whole how it weighed him, the news about Fox's death. Because honestly, you think about it, it was really sad. Clarence basically knocked at Fox last time. It almost killed him. And to know that this was the last thing he has ever done to his adoptive son, and it's baffling. It's something indescribable. And now that he knows that he will never have a chance to mend things up, it's awful. So Ash kind of just gave him the message saying that, well, there's only one chance to make things right. You have to go to this planet and activate this transdimensional bridge. So please help us. And because it's Ash, of course, that Clarence take up to the task and decides to go. Unfortunately, this message was also intercepted by none other than Todd. If you guys don't remember, Todd was actually one of the main antagonists of the last season. It's this man who went insane out of revenge out of Gary because, well, he during the whole final space sucking up the planet Earth, it killed off his whole family, and he survived. And so, yeah, it left him totally insane, and so much to the point that he begins to dedicate his life to, kill off Gary. And he finds this technically his chance to prevent this machine to open this portal and leave Gary to die in final space. So Clarence go there, and not only he confronts Todd, but every single people that Gary met and has a grudge against Gary, it gets there. So yeah, everybody. Not who's on the list? This family who thinks that Gary kills his the mother figure and wife, when that this is something that Clarence is partially responsible of. The melded Kevins, they return. Who else? What was it? This guy, this Time Lord guy who helped them, go back, to help them, in the Resurrection of Avocado episode. He just wants to kill Gary because, the deal that they made him, it cost him his job. What? Oh my God! Some others are technically escaping me. What else? What else? Also, the monstrous woman that Clarence almost married, but he just wanted to steal her, her treasure and everything, or her crown. That she returns. This time she wants to kill Clarence, mostly because she just wants him to sign his divorce paper with blood. So it becomes a total battle royal in that part. And Clarence's only, how can I say, only ally is, if you remember this mercenary guy, what was the name of the guy? Franzenhar? He becomes his only ally, and guess what? It ends up, killing the time guy, the melted Kevins, the alien woman, and the alien guy who wanted to kill Gary because of the wife stuff. These two, they hook together and they leave. But of course, it all ends up tragically because, well, Todd, out of his revenge, he managed to fatally shoot Clarence. And, well, Clarence does the same. And it ends up with Todd dying and Clarence, of course, activating the machine. And at the same time, well, he finally gets his redemption. And it's pretty sad. It's really sad when you see, his final moment in which he sees, a happy video picture of him with Fox and Ash. And man, Clarence really got his redemption. Honestly, I haven't seen a lot about Conan O'Brien works. I know that he's mostly a comedic actor, but this is probably one of his most serious yet heartwarming moments. Well, heartwarming maybe is not the correct word. Let's say that it's a sad tale of a con artist who betrayed everyone, and then this was technically his redemption, and it ended up in tragedy. But at the same time, that allowed to open the portal, and of course it becomes the time to finally get out of final space. The first one to go there to cross the other side is none other than Tribor and Quattro Nostro, and a whole army of resistance group that they managed to recruit, in their own quest. Oh yeah, and they fly around with those giant rabbits to make the things even weirder. Of course, that could have ended, but then during the while picking all the things to finally get out of final space, Quinn finds something interesting. She finds out these blueprints / plans, digital plans, of course, that tells that there is the Mr. Kevin, he just made a mechanism that it involves Kevin, the robot, in which he established that all these Kevins, they were originally constructed to become a protective barrier across the planet Earth. So, and they have weaponry that is enough to even kill off the Titans. So Quinn decides to say that, hey, we can't go there. We're gonna use that thing to kill off the Titan. Wait, are you crazy? We have to get out of all those things. No, but if we get out, they're gonna still follow us. Invicta will still come with the Titans and everything. We need to do this now. And of course, Gary sees, it weighs the dilemma on him. He sees that, yeah, he has some of the final space poisoning. Not as bad as Quinn still, but it's still spreading. But still, a decision was made. They're gonna take advantage of that thing to finally kill off the Titans. Oh dear, I mean, the Earth is shaking, the Lord Commander is there, so things can't get any worse, isn't it? Well, Lord Commander found something much more interesting than Mooncake himself. And that is that he found that on the nucleus of the planet Earth, there is this, how can I say, newborn Titan, as the nucleus or a fetus of a Titan who is well, is basically the sole reason why the Earth is shaking. And of course, the Lord Commander wants to take the body of that Titan so he can merge himself and turn himself into a Titan. Because if you know him, Lord Commander is a greedy in power, and he wants to find immortality. He even betrays Invictus just for that. So then, of course, it becomes a race against time, in which, for one hand, Avocado wants to take this opportunity to kill off the Lord Commander. So he goes alongside Cheryl, Stowaway's little Cato, Biscuit, and Kevin, in this kind of like this drilling chase scene that their plan is to implant a bomb and kill off the Lord Commander once and for all. But in the meantime, in Gary's side, alongside Professor Kevin and the rest of the gang, they're trying to activate, the machine that will allow to destroy the Titans. But of course, they have to deal, of course, with the presence of Invictus, who bring down his horde of zombie Garys and all these things. And of course, they have to activate a machine in Wisconsin, and they get help from Bolo. It's technically this big sci-fi moment that it's not much to say, but it still makes you feel anxious and really hopeful to that. Man, you always want these characters to come through, because man, that this episode made me realize that this is one of those shows that the more our heroes do, things get worse and worse and worse, and either it pisses you off, but at the same time it keeps the plot going. But it also makes you care more about the character, because these guys are suffer enough, and you just want them. You just want them, for this to succeed. And they found this glimmer of hope in order to, finally get things done. And, well, the best way I can say about this is that, well, not the best way I can say this, is that this episode really gives you hope and then pulls out a Monokuma in order with despair. Yeah, that's a Danganronpa reference. Though, because how does it end? Because this is a review that probably many people have seen. Well, how about this? The Professor Kevin sacrifices himself. He decides to stay, and he gets killed. You think that the bomb finally killed off Lord Commander? Well, we were wrong, because once our character finally thought that they activated the Kevins in order to finally end off all the Titan menace forever. Unfortunately, Lord Commander now merged with a Titan. He rises, destroys the Kevins, and now they got a bigger enemy in front of them. Yep. Lord Commander, now he became a Titan. Really bad news are coming. How things can't get any worse. Oh my god, this is gonna be a recurring theme of this series. I mean, let's count these blessings. How can I, where do I start? Lord Commander, he's a Titan. The device made of Kevins that was used to finally get rid of the Titans, gone. Escaping final space? Not a chance. The transdimensional bridge, it got stranded into space because of the Lord Commander rising. So, yeah. And on top of it all, Lord Commander managed to kill Ballo. So our gang has to escape, but of course, Lord Commander confronts Invictus because Invictus is pissed of his betrayal. So everyone's morale is on the dumps because when they had their chance to escape, they couldn't do it. They had the chance to get rid of the Titans, it got worse. And man, everyone morale is so bad that even Avocado, he puts all the blame to Quinn because, well, basically she was the one that who came up with the bright idea to not leave final space and all these things. And well, and things get even worse when Invictus finds the gang and he sends out his horde of zombie Garys into it. And from this point, almost the whole episode, it does feel like a really decent sci-fi zombie movie. And now that I think about it, when was the last time that we got some, space zombies that is not in video games? I would say. I mean, I know I'm asking a little bit too much because we had this oversaturation of zombie films. I mean, last year we had Army of the Dead, and it kind of sucked. But now that I think about it, we haven't had this, space zombies in media for a long time. It kind of and this is kind of like the closest thing to it. And honestly, I find this kind of like creepy. I must say, it is a creepy thought about having Garys from different timelines, and that each one of them failed and they got killed, and all his corpses are basically controlled by this godlike entity, Invictus. And on top of it all, we also have this conflict with Ash, who Invictus is manipulating to make her come to his side and getting closer and closer and closer. If I have to nitpick one thing, this episode I wanted to give a little bit of a chance of Ash bonding with Cheryl, considering that Cheryl is trying to make up for the things that she has done, but it just doesn't go a little bit too much. Probably the biggest, probably one of the most important things that happen is technically Avocado being angry at Quinn, accusing her that it's basically her responsibility to get out of to ditch getting out of final space and just trying to save the Earth and all these things. So he accuses her of having this messiah complex in which even though Quinn said that, well, you could have leave on your own, but it was a tough decision. The deal was very tempting, but of course Avocado revealed that everybody in final space except for her is now affected with the final space poisoning, which of course that puts some guilt on Quinn. Even though the episode doesn't mention it, at least you can tell that that Quinn has a little bit of that personality of trying to save everyone, mostly because he has still her guilt of not saving her sister. Remember that episode a few moments ago? Well, well, after a long, after its proper, zombie battle, uh, Ash managed to, hold off one of those zombies, and Little Kato actually had one brilliant idea in which they're gonna try to take out the Invictus out of that zombie, and when they did, here comes one of the most sad but also most terrifying thoughts. Is because once the Invictus was out of that zombie, that Gary kind of he returns to life, still dying because he had piercing on his body and all these things. But the things that he said is it kind of reflects the horror of the whole thing that is happening in Final Space, and the destiny of Gary, in which he like many other Garys from different timelines, different space, and all these things. They all just activated the bomb that seals off Final Space from their universe. But unfortunately, that leaves him, stranded into space until his death. And and with having the realization that this happens over and over and over again in different timelines, and it kind of feels, you really see that the toll of that it takes on him. He even when he sees Quinn, he's like I was waiting, but you never came, and all these things. And of course, at least Quinn gave him some parting words, saying that I'm here and never. It gave him a little bit of, how can I say, some merciful words before he finally dies. But everyone begins to see that everything feels hopeless. I mean, it happened so much that the other Garys, what they only did, it was just stalling for time. It only prevented the Titans to go into their universe, but only for a certain period of time. But of course, now it feels a little bit different, considering that the Gary that we know is still alive, and he's not the one that activated the reactor that time. It was Quinn during that moment. And then, much to their horror, they see other planet Earths. Yeah, other planet Earths from different timelines, different dimensions, different others. And you might say, okay, maybe they're gonna find some other stuff. But no, that's actually bad, because they realized that the reason why planet Earth was sucked into Final Space is because, remember the last Earth that we saw? They had a Titan in the nucleus. So basically planet Earth is just an egg for a Titan, and now they find out an incubation process of creating an army of Titans. So there's only one thing to do, according to Quinn. They have to fall back, find the transdimensional bridge, and have everyone get out of Final Space. Because time is running out. Everyone has the Final Space poisoning. So she finally realized that the responsible way for now is to fall back. Thanks to Biscuit's effort, they finally found the transdimensional bridge. And now that I look at it closely, for some reason, the shape of of this gate, of this Stargate, for some reason it kind of reminded me of Halo. For those who doesn't know the game, just check that design. I'm not gonna go too much into details, but of course that the transdimensional gate now needs some charging, and they need mooncake and some mechanical sci-fi stuff that I'm not gonna go too much into detail. The only thing that it was kind of that it kind of gave out some kind of epiphany is that Gary finds out that some of the mechanics are really similar to him, in which he just realized that he's been working on these stuff 5 years for 5 years. Because if you can remember, ever since the start of the series, Gary was technically held into as a prisoner due to to screwing up with the Infinity Guard because he just wanted to hit on Quinn. So he just was working on these things as working at making yeah, well, you get the idea. I'm not gonna go. The words escape me. But anyway, they try to. Things are, they're bonding. They're finding some hope. But unfortunately, the first try kind of fails because the whole thing overheats. It overcharges the system and it collapses. But of course, everyone feels kind of feeling down. But one of the most important things that this episode gets through in terms of the story, it happens more halfway, in which Little Cato, while having a conversation with Cheryl, by telling her that he is technically his adopted grandmother, now that Gary is technically like a second father. Little Cato gets a little bit of an epiphany in which he decides to ask his father about his mother, which is something that he didn't even thought about asking. A little bit of a side note, it also comes up a little bit of an interesting, a little bit kind of like an interesting Easter egg from previous season in which when Cheryl asks, "Hey kid, how old are you?" and Little Cato say that, "Well, I'm 14, but mentally I'm 74, but well, let's leave it that I'm just 14. That kind of makes reference, of course, that episode in which Little Cato gets stuck into this time thing that I kind of escapes me, but it's the one where Little Cato gets stuck in this time and space in which he aged. But when he gets rescued, he gets back into it, as the 14-year-old kid. But anyway, yeah, Avocado, when he just tells him a lie, saying that, well, your mother's name is Apricot and all these things. And considering that everything is going, down the shitter, everyone is dying of, the final space radiation. Avocado just technically has a conversation with Gary telling him that he is eating him up, that he killed off, his real parents, and it is finally time for him to tell him the truth. But unfortunately for them, he overhears this, and considering that she has too much into her mind, she begins to deduce that she is living with a lot of liars and murderers, and that Little Cato doesn't deserve someone like Avocado. So she basically tries to kill off Gary and Avocado and decides to kidnap Little Cato by, of course, telling him the whole truth and taking him to Invictus. She decides to join Invictus out of her rage of knowing all that. And well, in ways I find this understandable, Ash's motive, but at the same time you can tell that she's being totally reckless and let's say unreasonable. Because this kind of shows that this is a character that is pretty much clinging into Gary's mistakes. She feels like this family is not trustworthy. She doesn't even see Quinn as Nightshade, because if you remember season 2, Nightshade and Ash has a little bit of a kind of like a sisterly bond, but now that there's Quinn, she doesn't feel like it is the same. So in the end, Ash decides to kidnap little Kato, uh, and decides to go to Invictus, and it all ends, of course, with Gary and Avocado deciding that, well, it is time to rescue him. We have to make things right. Well, it's time for the season finale of the final stage. So, as you can see, Gary and Avocado are now decided to follow Ash to rescue little Kato. And, because she took him to Invictus to join him after she gets her mental breakdown after hearing, about that Avocado is actually responsible for the death of little Kato's real parents. And well, technically, it kind of starts out like any season finale is. They give it all they got, in the action and the emotions, in which is really heartbreaking to see Ash, that she goes totally insane and totally even embracing Invictus side, even though we know how as an audience that all was manipulated by Invictus. Although it is also although emotionally, like I think I said before, that it's also Ash's clinging personality to the family that she grew up, Clarence and Fox, and of course she deals with the trauma that she lost her family and she lost her family and her sister, who she was close with. Which, honestly, that kind of brings out a total reverse on that character, because at first she was one that she didn't like her powers, but now she's totally embracing it. And honestly, it's so heart-wrenching. It makes you feel like you're watching such a cruel show, but well, sometimes dramas you have to go all out on this. Oh, and but mostly during this battle, also then you also get to see that. Remember that during I forgot to mention one thing, is that during the whole season, Biscuit has been working on Hugh's old robotic body, and he never tells what it is and something like that. Well, now it finally shows that he has been working on an upgrade on Hugh's body, so he can act like this colossal robot with much more strength, instead of this pudgy little robot. So yeah, but of course these big moments get interrupted when the Lord Commander invades, and he begins to clash with Ash. This takes the opportunity for Avocado and Gary to take little Kato back and run away. Oh, and Hugh too. But also in the meantime, the rest of the gang are of course finding a way to recharge the transdimensional bridge. But they find out that the reason why they kind of overcharged is that it needed a core, and much to their surprise, that core is inside the helmet of Nightfall, in which thanks to a message from recorded message of Nightfall, she tells Quinn that she can get it by of course putting it on, since it can trace the biosignals from Quinn. At first, Quinn is hesitant because, well, it kind of means that she is fated to become Nightfall. But of course, some pep talk helps her thinking that, well, it may be, but you're still Quinn. So they get the core. They manage to they manage to repair it, to charge it. And of course, what about someone opening the other side? Well, thanks to Tribor, who actually made it out of a final space. Yeah, and finally everyone can escape. Except that Ash didn't want to let them go, but Mooncake decides to hold her back, which unfortunately Ash just absorbed Mooncake's power, by finally capturing him and using, Mooncake's power to finally free Invictus. Our gang finally escaped from final space, but unfortunately Invictus is freed. Invictus even imprisoned the Lord Commander the same way as Bolo was imprisoned. And the gang is just watching horrified. Not as Invictus just comes out and Gary just even says, "Oh my god, what have we done?" This was an intense finale, I'll say. And man, that each time this series gets so intense and so sad that it makes you, it's so insane, I must say. And man, that the season finale is it wants you feel so eager to see what else is gonna go on. So, and man, I have no choice but to have to wait for season 4. Yeah, season 4 is gonna be... What? Fuck you! Yep, you saw this, and I even said it in the introduction. Because of the merging of Warner Media and Discovery, the show was unfortunately canceled. Good Jesus, my God! Sometimes makes me wonder why the most underrated shows and the really good ones are the ones who get the axe. Not just Final Space. It also happened with Infinity Train. And Infinity Train was amazing. And why? They keep canceling some great shows that it slips under the radar of many people, and only for them to have more, well, Rick and Morty or SpongeBob. Okay. I maybe I went too harsh saying Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty is a good show, but it's not like, saying that, oh, it's the greatest show ever or something like that. Because at least Final Space had the decency to be more three-dimensional than well, Rick and Morty, who is a comedy. Well, this one is also a little bit of a comedy, but this one has a little bit more character than this one. Okay, let me calm down. I was just ranting about this for a while. Okay, but overall, let's put a little bit of a cap here. First, let's put a cap on season 3. Season 3, compared to the other 2 seasons, it has to be one of probably the least funny of all of all 3 Final Space seasons. And it's not because it was bad or something like that. It's mostly because season 3, the stakes were so high that the characters even were aware that it's no time for jokes. We are during the whole time they are in grave danger, and every time they do something, it gets from bad to worse and worse and worse. And we see, and we begin to see more depth into some of the other characters. Like we see the truth of Avocado and Little Cato. We see the background of Quinn and why she is like that. We we also get to know a little bit about Ash and her slip from to insanity when she finds out where her powers come from and what happens when she loses almost everything. She loses the family that she grew up with in the hands of Gary unintentionally because as you can see, Invictus manipulated everything. That kind of makes me think that Invictus is in. If many people could have seen more, that Titan could have probably be also one of the greatest villains in American animation. I mean, he is so manipulative and so cruel that he's even a little bit in the design of Invictus when he kind of imprisoned. He's technically Sauron from the Lord of the Rings. And Final Space again is a creepy place when you think about it. Like I said, the more I think about it, is becoming less Kingdom Hearts and more Event Horizon. Although there is some charming moment, I'll say, because they still had to keep some little bits of humor to keep a little bit lighthearted. But as the episode progresses, it becomes much and much sad, and indeed you really care for these characters when you stick with them. You, just like Gary said, all these characters are broken in one way or another. They're just trying to find some solution to fix it, even though everything feels so hopeless. And now, you know, this ends, of course, with the big bad guy just coming out and Gary feeling responsible for everything. And unfortunately, we're not gonna see it because of the goddamn cancellation. I'm not that guy to swear, but this one kind of deserves it. Still, despite this, how can I say, injustice, I could say that Final Space was overall is a really underrated show. Because I think the biggest problem that they had is that maybe when it was promoted, people thought that it was gonna be one of those shows that is gonna be kind of like, you know, the wannabe Rick and Morty or the wannabe Family Guy. I mean, the character design is the typical Fox style from Family Guy or not Rick and Morty, Family Guy stuff. But it was kind of promoted a little bit like that, but little that they know is that once you see the show properly, it has a kind of like these kind of like this humor. But what I like is that it was aware that it was a space opera, and when it has its humor, and but when it needed to, you know, make a heartwarming moment, it sticks with it. Unlike, of course, Family Guy, well, there are some rare episodes that has some heartwarming moments. It doesn't stick so much. It's kind of just like brush it up, saying, okay, we had this moment, just let it sink, and yeah, back to it. Not this show. Not this show. And also, it's not extremely violent or extremely nihilistic like Rick and Morty. It may have kind of like similar themes in one way or another, or similar, well, ambience, because both Rick and Morty and Final Space, they deal with multiverses and multiple timelines, and but of course, there's kind of like a big huge difference between Rick Sanchez and Gary Goodspeed. Well, Rick Sanchez, he just kind of became this bitter, angry genius that life doesn't matter. He just doesn't care. Uh, uh, Gary is a little bit more optimistic. He just tries his best, and I love how this guy just grew up from just this rebellious doofus who he just wanted to bank Quinn, but it got him into hot water, and he just kind of just became lonely. And as the series progresses, you see that from his goofy self, he becomes more mature into an outstanding character, I'll say, alongside with his other crew. I'll say that my favorite moments are also his bromance between him and Avocado. Little Kato also, he's a great character. Mooncake is so adorable that you feel bad for the little thing. I already told you that at first I was kind of like, Quinn, I seen this character archetype, but it was thanks to season 3 that it really fleshed out more of that character of why she is like she is, that it made me realize how understand her more. Then of course when we also have Hugh, how he kind of came up, he just being an AI who has to tolerate Gary's antics, and until he begins to warm up as a friendly AI. Tribor being the wild card of the group. Then we also get to see Fox and Ash and Clarence for the majority of season 2. We also get to see, of course, Gary's parents. Cheryl, she started out really being unlikable until the end of the season 2, in which she finally sees her error of her way. And oh my goodness, again, I can't stress enough that season 1 it still hits me. It still hits me, the moment in which Gary managed to go back in time to see his father, and his father sacrifices himself in order to save the universe. And his words saying that it doesn't matter if you fail, it's good enough for me, is really, it still hits me up to this day. It's so anyway, yeah. Honestly, guys, it's pretty sad to see a great show given the axe. But they're just like that episode of Bolo. There is a little bit of a glimmer of hope, because I've been hearing that this show actually is having a little bit of a following with a few fans, and Twitter, and there's even petitions. They're asking for to find a way to continue, because honestly, I don't want this show to end like that. At least maybe if it could find another home to continue the series, or if it could, how could I say, make a movie deal out of it, or make it, streaming services. That could work. And that could work. This is although I'm being exactly kind of feeling a little bit too hopeful for maybe the impossible, but honestly, just like Infinity Train, Final Space will always have my support, and I'm glad that I made these vlogs kind of reflecting on it. So if you haven't checked it out, I hope I convinced you guys. Let's pray that Final Space doesn't end up like that, and let's hope that the creators do their best to bring this show to a conclusive and satisfying ending. But if they try and it isn't good enough? Well, just like a wise man said, it's still good enough for me.